Second's ready.
And
Good evening. Good evening. Good evening, welcome to City Council. It is July 14th, already mid-July. And I feel like we just had 4th of July last week, so here we are, but welcome. We will do public work with my Councilor Schwartz.
present.
Councilor Roden. Here. Councilor Guaver is excused. Mayor Schwartzler. Here. Councilor Martin Willis. Here. Councilor Mark Morton. Here. Councilor Clark. Here. Thank you. We have our meeting minutes from our regular meeting on 6/23 that we have to approve.
Move to approve.
Second. A motion by Councilor Martin Willis, a second by Councilor Cord. Councilor Cord.
Aye.
Councilor Morton. Aye. Councilor Martin Willis.
Aye.
Councilor Roden. Aye. Councilor Schwartz.
Aye.
Thank you. We do have a couple of visitor public comments. I have one from Terry Crock that does not wish to speak, but wants to acknowledge that she is in favor of the Library, Parks and Museum fee. So thank you for putting out your comment card. And next up, we have Karen Johnson.
Good evening, Mayor Hay, councilor, staff, and community members. My name is Karen Johnson, and I'm here representing the Friends of Community Parks. We, the board, want to say thank you to the city for the help you gave us in our initial successful experience putting together Independence Days. I would like to say very successful or even extremely successful, and I don't think it would be an exaggeration, but we don't have all the data put together just yet. The vendors, the talent show, duck derby, live music, volunteers, and fireworks all were a wonderful part of our 2-day celebration of our country's founding, helping to make it the success that it was. And obviously, the support of our community. We will be here at a council meeting in August to give you numbers and feedback that we received. And again, thank you for all of your help.
Great job. Thank you. And moving on to reports and presentations, item 5.1, the Center Street Bridge project update. ODOT.
Hello, good evening. Anna Hanson, I'm the ODOT area manager, and I am gonna make this really brief because you need to talk to these two important people who are going to do our presentation. First of all, thank you for having us here. We really appreciate it. I just want to thank the council for their wonderful staff. Your city administrator is an incredible communicator, and I super appreciate her. So thank you, Kevin. Everybody. Anyway, thanks for having us here. I'm going to turn it over to, I don't know if it's Andrew first or Bob.
I'm up first.
All right, thank you.
Well, good evening, everyone. I appreciate the opportunity to be with you here today. Just wanted to share, I do love this opportunity. This is a cool place. I was actually here last night. I brought my children here to your guys' theater to watch the Minions. The movie was mediocre, but the study was nice. So I really do love Independence. It's a fun opportunity to get to be involved today. So share a little bit about the project. So I'm the project manager for Oregon DOT. I manage a number of projects, but this is one of them that I've been managing over the last few years. I'm a bridge engineer on the side, so I also do engineering as well, but I was not as an engineer on this particular project. Bob Goodrich is the consultant project manager, and his team, we outsource the engineering to his team with Dow. So some of the things I'll go over today, I'll kind of hit the project at a 40,000 foot, so we'll just talk generally about the project, talk a little bit about the project schedule, some of the impacts, specifically construction schedule and impacts from construction, and then we'll hit some of the traffic impacts. Bob will talk more about that, and then we'll talk about phase 2. Most of what I'll talk about today is on phase 1, and I'll talk a little bit why we faced the project as well. And then at the end, we have lots of time for questions. I cleared my calendar this evening, so I'm happy to stay with you guys as long as you'd like. Next slide. So if you look on the screen there, the project split into two phases and we color coded them there. The light blue is phase one, so that's the one that we're gonna be doing here this year. Starting this year, and then phase two is in the darker blue, and that's what we'll be doing at a future time. The reason we phased it was primarily because of soil conditions. So when we started the design of this project, we intended to do the whole bridge all at once. But when we got into the soil on the west side of the bridge, we discovered pretty extensive liquefaction risk. Liquefaction is just how soil acts during an earthquake. It acts kind of like a liquid. And so a lot of the more traditional seismic retrofit methodology we would use to mitigate the seismic forces on the bridge wouldn't work in that type of soil, and so we need to do something a lot more extensive, likely large drill shafts and largely new bridges on that section. And so to keep the project moving forward, to keep construction schedule to a minimum, and to show forward progress, we split it up so we can deal with phase one while we look at phase two and how we want to address some of the issues with the soil and other things on the west side. So this is one of the first things one of the things you'll see in phase one. We're replacing the entire pier. It's kind of that transition zone between phase one and phase two on the west bank. So it'll be that first pier you see on the west bank we're replacing. And this kind of gives you an example of what it would look like in phase two and why this is unique. So we're completely replacing that bend. We're gonna put two new drill shafts on either side of it and a new cross beam across the top. Next. In the water, we'll be doing more of a traditional strengthening. So right now there's a footing with a number of piles in the ground. We're gonna be enlarging that, adding additional piles and anchors to strengthen the foundation. Next. On the east side, we'll be doing a lot of similar things. We'll be adding some pier walls in there, which just means filling in some of the columns that are there with a wall in between, which helps with that stability when the structure is shaking. We'll be enlarging foundations just like we are in the water. We'll be adding additional piles and anchors and strengthening a number of the members. Next. One cool thing that we got to do, or we're going to be doing as part of this project, is replacing the water line that's on the bridge. This is something we're going to be doing in conjunction with City of Salem. So City of Salem currently has 3 water lines that cross the river, none of which are seismically resilient, which just means none of them are expected to be serviceable after an earthquake. So after this project, they'll have not only a new one, but a larger one. So currently they have a 24-inch water line that's crossing on our bridge. And we're going to upsize it to a 36-inch water line, so significantly larger, adding additional capacity as West Salem continues to grow, and providing that seismic resiliency that area needs. Next. So this is the schedule we have now. Not as many asterisks as I would normally give during this section, but I just say there's a couple asterisks whenever we share a schedule. Lots of things in there that are subject to change. During construction, things come up, right? Everybody's aware of what that could be. We still have a few items outstanding, but we expect them to not interfere with bidding the project later this year. We're planning to bid the project in September and start construction towards the end of the year. And then construction would continue through 2030. So some of the impacts you're going to see. Yes. So part of enlarging those foundations in the water requires us to de-water the area around the foundations, which would be cofferdams. So if you're not familiar with what a cofferdam is, it's basically just a steel wall around the foundation where they can pump the water out the outside. So they kind of section the river off from that foundation so that we can enlarge it, pour footings, and do what we need to do in there without being underwater. In order to get to those foundations, we'll need to build a temporary bridge. So we'll be building a work platform next to the bridge. I don't know how much you guys travel up to Portland, but Abernathy has a very similar setup. They have cofferdams around their foundations and they have work bridges, and it looks very similar. A lot of these large projects, you'll see similar type of construction. Next. On either side, you're going to see tree removal. So if you spend much time in the park, you'll see that. Long term, I would say this is actually a good thing. Short term, it's a little bit unfortunate that we're removing so many trees, but we'll be replacing all of them with trees that are more appropriate, and we're going to give the city an entirely new parking lot in the areas that we're impacting. So long term, it's gonna be a much nicer area actually, and we're gonna replace with trees and soil areas that are more appropriate for that area. But in the short term, we will be having some impacts on the vegetation around the bridge. One of the unfortunate impacts of working on a bridge is you gotta be around the bridge. One of the things you will see also, we'll talk more extensively about this in later slides, is closures and impacts to traffic. So there'll be 2 nighttime weekend closures, so for 2 weekends. And for the 2 days on, 2 nights on those weekends, you'll see full closures of the bridge. And that's primarily to replace the bridge joints. It's difficult to work on a joint and have traffic driving over the joint, so for those nights, we're gonna have to close traffic completely, and route either through Corvallis or up on 99. Only 2 weekends, we're encouraging, quick work and it could be even less. We're being fairly conservative, but we are encouraging them to work quickly during those full closures. One that'll be longer is the lane closures. There's a number of lane closures, there's single lane closures. The one that'll impact traffic the most will be the 2 lane closures. Bob will talk more about that, but there'll be 3 months of 2 lane closures on the south and 3 months of 2 lane closures on the. And there'll be ramp closures associated with that as well. Next slide. This would be some of those ramp closures you'll see and some of those lane closures as well. So Front Street will have lane closure, Marion Street on the ramp there's a closure as well. Next. So what construction impacts will you see in what years, and Bob will talk specifically about when you'll see some of those traffic impacts. Those are actually still a little ways out, but some of the first things you're gonna see, water line relocation. So that's not necessarily the water line on the bridge, but the water line going up to the bridge. There's a decent amount of work that we need to relocate the water line around the bridge to meet up with our new system. You're gonna see them building a lot of the temporary structures, that'd be coffer dams and work platforms. That'll all be in 2027. 2028, you're gonna see them getting pretty heavy on the east side of the bridge, doing a lot of that construction, enlarging the foundations, pouring pier walls, working on any of the superstructure or the stuff above ground that you see, using columns, that kind of stuff. And then you're gonna see a lot of in-water work. So the contractor's critical path is gonna be that in-water work. There's only a certain period of time that they're allowed to work in the water, so they're gonna be working in the water as much as they can. Essentially, the summer months is what they're allowed to work in the water. 2029, you're gonna see more of that east side. You're gonna see the water line get upgraded during that time, so that's when you'll see them start to shut down the water on the bridge, replace the water line, and then start it back up. 2030, gonna finish up the retrofit in the water, gonna finish the east side. We're gonna remove the work bridge, rebuild the parking lots, and then 2031, gonna clean up our mess, get out. Thanks. And I'll let Bob talk a little more specific about the traffic impacts and plenty of time to ask questions about it as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Andrew. Can you hear me okay? Right. Yeah, so thanks for having us be here this evening again. I'm Bob Woodridge. I work with Dowell, the engineering firm leading the Center Street project. Before jumping into traffic impacts, to build a little bit of credibility, I want to share, I live in West Salem. And so as I talk through these impacts and everyone envisioned what some of the lane closures that Andrew mentioned look like, I'm gonna be figuring out how to get around town and get to work, like lots of other people. So if you could click slide, please. So there's a lot of traffic impact stages up there. The orange box that just popped up, I'm gonna focus on those. Those are the closures, lane closures or full closures on Center Street proper that are gonna have the most notable, result in the most notable traffic impacts over the duration of the project. And I'll touch on the bottom half toward the end in a little briefer manner. Next slide, please. Okay, so first we'll start talking about the extended 2-lane closures that Andrew mentioned. We expect these to occur later in construction just due to it's a pretty intricate sequence of work the contractor has to do. And so later in 2029, maybe in 2030, we anticipate these 2-lane closures to start. So the red lines on the screen there represent the half of the bridge is going to be closed in the first stage. So if you're driving on 22 coming into town, the right lane of 22, after you get past Edgewater and Rosemont, will neck down, the right lane will close. if you're coming down Wallace Road, the right lane on Wallace will close as you go past Glencoe and Taggart. Channeling traffic into, a single lane for each, so there's only one lane from each feeding onto the bridge itself. We expect this stage to last up to 3 months, and the reason we need to close it is because the contractor to install those joints that Andrew mentioned. Contractor needs to open up an 8 or 10 foot hole in the bridge, if you will, to demolish a bunch of concrete. Put in big steel joints and pour concrete back. So there's no way to maintain traffic and do that. The 3 months is, we're hoping that's a conservative estimate. We're in our contract special provisions. We're actually allowing the contractor a little less time and attaching liquidated damages if they exceed the time we've, allotted them. So we're trying to encourage them to stay on schedule and work as quickly as they can, but there's no mistaking that this, this stage of traffic is gonna, or stage of construction is gonna back up traffic, on Wallace Road and on 22. You may be wondering about emergency services. So we've worked very closely with regional emergency service providers in the Willamette Valley Communication Center. That's kind of the regional hub. And so what we've worked out with them is that red area that's closed. I don't have a pointer, but if you go up to kind of the west edge of the bridge, that's where the hole in the deck is going to be. Not the west edge of the bridge, the west edge of the river. That's where the hole in the deck is going to be opened up. So all the red lines to the left, we're just closing to, funnel traffic into those 2 lanes. So we're going to have flaggers kind of on the west and north end of where the closures start. And 2-way radio communication with a dedicated frequency. So if an ambulance coming from Dallas or Independence needs to get over the bridge, they just radio ahead and there's a flagger kind of at the front end of the closure, lets the emergency vehicle use that closed portion of the bridge up to, talking hands too much, up to the opening in the deck where there'll be another flagger that could use a break in traffic to let the emergency vehicle sort of skip the queue. So we've really, worked as much as we can to minimize those delays. Another question you may be wondering is how does this time out with the work on the Independence Bridge over the river right here? Our company actually is also working on that project, so it makes for nice coordination. We expect that your Independence Bridge work and the traffic impacts associated with that to be complete before we hit these stages of traffic. And so, because a lot of traffic will naturally divert down to Independence here. And so, as we've currently laid it out, we don't anticipate, an overlap of those construction stages. I want to caveat that with the Center Street Bridge contractor. We're giving them kind of a lot of flexibility in how to approach the work. We think they need to sequence the work in this way that pushes these traffic closures later into construction. But they could come to the table with some innovative or creative idea that moves them up. In which case we, come back and, work with, the Independence Bridge contractor and our contractor to kind of figure things out, but we don't anticipate that being an issue. Next slide, please. So it's second stage, another 3 months. This is essentially identical to what I just described, but the left lane on 22 and the left lane of Wallace will be closed. The same channelizing traffic, the same accommodation of emergency vehicles. And the 3 months for each stage we anticipate to occur successively. So over about a 6-month window, that's really when we'll see most of these traffic impacts. Next slide. And so associated with each of those stages, there's, ramps to either Front Street, northbound Front Street or southbound Front Street that have to be closed as well. And so they're, blue for southbound Front Street and yellow for northbound Front Street ramps. Those are the detours that traffic will take since they won't be able to, use the ramps on the bridge. We've incorporated some changes to various intersections through downtown, temporary changes to better improve traffic flow, allowing vehicles to make free rights, off of Center Street onto Commercial to go south, to try to just, flush traffic out. At Division and Commercial, there'll be a temporary traffic signal that we're installing, again, because all that traffic that would normally go Front Street kind of out toward Kaiser is gonna be coming to that Division Street intersection by the police station, looking to make a right turn, and so we'll have a signal there to give them a phase to make that right turn. Next slide, please. So when the contractor's complete with that 6 months of, you know, the 2-lane closures, they've got the bones of the new joint installed, but the actual joint itself, the traffic will drive on, needs to be installed, and it needs to be installed full width. And so that's what drives the need for these full, you know, the full nighttime closures. We anticipate the contractor really just needing two. One, there's 2 different bridge piers that have these joints that are going in. We anticipate needing 1 night for each joint. We're allowing them 2 nights for each joint because it's, you know, it's pretty unusual work. They may run into a snag or a hiccup, so we're messaging it could be up to 4 nights. The official signed detour is gonna be in blue there from, you know, Salem down to Corvallis, keeping them on state highways. Making sure trucks avoid the Independence Bridge and, you know, the routine of getting stuck under the, you know, under the low overpasses. Despite all the signing, it still doesn't seem to matter, so we're trying not to compound that problem, we're not gonna solve the problem, but we're not gonna make it worse. Recognizing, you know, if you do need to travel, you know, in that evening, a lot of people will choose to use Independence instead of Corvallis if you're just a passenger vehicle. But ODOT will have, you know, a large media campaign blast, you know, a month or more ahead of the closure. So, you know, plan accordingly on the night of, you know, Saturday, whatever, you know. Try not to need to use the bridge from 11 to 5, which is the 6-hour window we're giving the contractor, your lowest traffic volume. Yeah, next slide, please. And so the rest of the table here is that the big table you definitely couldn't read at the beginning. This is kind of the bottom half of that blown up. And just kind of talk, you know, there's some single lane closures we'll have during the day on Center Street for some of that drill shaft work on the west side of the river that Andrew mentioned. The ramp up onto Marion Street is gonna be closed for up to 3 months, probably a little bit less, but maybe up to 3 months for some of the work on the east side of Front Street, you know, for get into the bridge footings. And then the water line work. Excuse me, the water line work to, you know, replacing it under Front Street requires some lane closures and a couple of nighttime closures on southbound Front Street. But if southbound Front Street detour during the evening, you know, just use Commercial Street and we don't anticipate that being too big of a deal. Next slide, please. So in terms of, and I've kind of already touched on this, but communication and mitigation of traffic impacts, you can scan that QR code. It's got Andrew's contact information on there. I think he took down his home address, but you get his email address, phone number. There's a transportation, I think, is that survey still active?
Yeah, I think it's active till the 23rd or 26th of July.
Okay. So there's a transportation option survey that we're encouraging the community to take, so we can understand how when people use the bridge, and there's some, you know, maybe carpooling, van pooling options that we created as well, to try to just reduce the raw number of vehicles out there. But with that QR code, you can get direct project updates, not just for Center Street, but for any ODOT project, if you pick a region or a project or all ODOT projects. And of course, reach out with specific questions, and ahead of each traffic control stage, there's gonna be communication in all sorts of different forms, so people know what to expect and when to expect it. Slide, please. So like Andrew said, most of what he talked about, everything I've talked about to this point is for constructing phase 1, which, you know, is going to bid at the end of this year. Kind of in parallel with sending phase 1 to bid, we're gonna start working on an initial alternative study for phase 2 to look at what does that west approach, replace some or all of the west approaches of the bridge. The far west end of our phase 1 project, we've designed that new bridge pier to be flexible to accommodate whatever we come up with for the phase 2 design. So we're gonna start taking a look at that. We're gonna look at some practical ways to improve traffic flows. I mean, obviously the bridge isn't gonna get wider, but there's maybe some things in West Salem, Rosemont, or the Wallace, Edgewater, Marion Street, Center Street kind of knuckle there, that there's some things we can do to maybe improve traffic flow a little bit. So we'll start looking at that. And then, end of next year, early 2028, maybe start moving into, preliminary design, then final design and. The schedule up there, going into construction 2033 to 36 is kind of the best estimate at this point. It certainly will change, but kind of gives a sense of over the next 10 years. We're gonna continue to be working on this bridge and kind of bringing phase 2 to fruition. Slide. So thanks again, and we'll answer any questions or try to answer any questions you have.
Very comprehensive, thank you.
Thanks, Mayor. Thank you for your presentation. So, if I understand correctly, God forbid there's an earthquake between phase 1 and phase 2. The bridge itself is seismically sound, the normal view would get all.
If phase 1 is complete, but phase 2 is not complete, we don't expect the west portions of the bridge to be serviceable after the earthquake.
So no one will be able to get on first.
The west side would be unserviceable. However, with the main sections of the bridge intact, your restoration of services would be much quicker. Getting over the river is always the most difficult part of emergency response restorations.
And if I remember correctly, the Center Street's the one going into San.
Correct. Yeah,
We're talking about the ramp that you're talking about, phase 2 is people getting on.
but in an emergency, that's actually a good clarification. So in an emergency, Center Street's gonna serve as two-way traffic.
Okay.
Because the other bridges are gone.
It's gone.
But, well, I shouldn't say that. The other bridges are unlikely to fare well.
And in your account, one more question, thanks, Mayor, sorry, and in your accounting of traffic. We spent a lot of time talking about truck traffic, because the diverting, trying to avoid the Independence Bridge, but. Have you done any studies about the impact of the Independence Bridge during this construction, so the backup's happening? So we can, I know this is years away, but start really talking to people about being aware of this project, making sure that they're paying attention and participating in feedback. Has there been any studies on the impact to the Independence Bridge from the construction?
Was there something that you mentioned? Yeah. So we did study traffic impacts specifically around Center Street. Not the Independence Bridge in and of itself. We don't account for the Independence Bridge as part of the detours because it's not part of our system, right? Where we would use either the Corvallis Bridge or furthermore. And so we're not accounting for that as one of our detours. And so in the analysis, we wouldn't accommodate that. Our strategy is to discourage everyone from using Independence Bridge. Our detours are not going to be signed for it. We will specifically discourage trucks because and Bob was very generous in saying, we're not going to make it worse, but we probably will. We're going to try not to make it worse because there's going to be more trucks that are going to be detouring and they're going to make wrong turns, and we're going to do everything in our power to stop them from doing so. But people have minds of their own, and they're going to do things they shouldn't.
I guess I would just encourage ODOT, since we still have time, think about how people are gonna naturally act, knowing that that bridge is gonna be construction-y. And they'll be going through our community to get the signal. And the impacts to our community and the traffic there. While we still have time to communicate and really think about that impact, I would encourage you all to just think about it. Work with our staff on how we can resolve some of the worst of it.
Absolutely, I think that's great, yeah, we'd like to do that, and as we get closer to that time, I think it's important to us to coordinate that communication plan, because you're 100% right, it will have an impact on the community. Hopefully it just brings lots of people to your businesses.
Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, once this is complete, will this bridge withstand the Cascadia type of earthquake, or what type of earthquake will it withstand?
It's designed to withstand the Cascadia subduction zone, yeah. And be serviceable afterwards, I should say that, so not only that it be safe, that people on it would be safe, because there is different levels of design, it's designed to be serviceable. So that vehicles can be continued to use it, and it would be two-way traffic, because we don't expect the other bridges in the area to have that.
Thank you very much for that update. Appreciate you being here and getting us ready for this.
When we get a copy of the PowerPoint, I didn't see a copy.
I have the end already.
Thank you.
Yep.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Appreciate it.
All right. Good information for us to have and to plan for. Next up, my report, my mayor's report is going to be short and sweet. I do want to thank the Friends of the Community Parks. We had a great 4th of July. It's a lot of work to put that on for the community, and this was the first year that we handed that off, and appreciate all of their hard work and dedication. Appreciate the staff involved in helping with that transition as well. But I hope everyone had a happy and safe 4th of July. Also want to mention that the quilt project is now up. If you haven't seen, we have one obviously right out here in the lobby, but there are other quilts throughout town. So that's been a really fun project for people to see. And then I want to give a warm welcome to our new quilt store. So happy to have you here. And with that, I am going to hand it over to the council liaison reports. First is Councilor Source with the mic.
All right, thanks, Mayor. So I met earlier, well, I guess in June, so this is earlier this month. Met in June, and we reviewed the budget. Approved the budget for this upcoming year. I think it's really important for our community to know that Mina is still operating in a surplus and is well tracked to pay back the debts to both their communities. In addition to that, as you all may know, MyNet is the guest provider, the servicer of Dallas Millennium Fiber, and there was a new, the board approved a new partnership with the owners of the infrastructure in Dallas, serving that community. So looking forward to seeing how MyNet, now that is here for the future, how MyNet grows in Dallas and other parts of rural Polk County. And I think as I told the mayor and a couple other members of our community, you know, we're starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel of the dead. So some of our conversations are encouraging MyNet to start imagining post paying back the debts to our community. What's the plan? What are we doing? What are we envisioning? Because they're making it, their surplus is really healthy. And so moving forward, I think our community making this investment is going to see lots of forward. So thank you, Mayor.
Thank you for that. Next up, we have Councilor Rowland with the first.
Yeah, I don't have much to report. Our last meeting was canceled, but we did pass the master parks plan at the beginning of this year, and everybody's still excited about that. We're transitioning since Carl retired to the leadership, so I anticipate a meeting next month, and we'll get back to everybody with more information.
Yeah. All right, thank you. And Senior Manager West, handing it over to you.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor and Council. So I'd like to begin with a quick update from our library. So summer reading is off to a fantastic start. So far, 738 community members have signed up for the program, and there's still plenty of time to participate. So anyone who hasn't, anyone who hasn't, please register, and it's open until August 13th. Our summer programs continue to be extremely well attended. Both the Lego City and Home Depot building events drew approximately 75 participants each, which was great to see. The library continues to support our community in other important ways. Goodwill Job Connections will be at the library tomorrow. Is that tomorrow, the 15th, you guys? Yeah. From 1 to 3 in the library meeting room, providing employment resources and assistance to job seekers. And then looking ahead, we've got some great family programs this week, including story time tomorrow morning at 10:30, Paradise of the Samoa tomorrow at 3 at Riverview Park, and Flower Power on Thursday at 3 p.m. in Inspiration Garden. Did I get it all right, Patrick?
Great.
Yeah, nice. Okay. And as Mayor mentioned, Joe retired last week. Thank you to everyone who came out to his retirement event. I know that we all wish him well in retirement, except me. I hate that he retired and I hope it's miserable. But on the other side, I'm extremely pleased to welcome Dustin Lupinado as our new Public Works Director. He was most recently serving as the Public Works Director for the City of North Plains. And he brings a wealth of municipal public works experience to Independence. Now, rather than having to listen to me, I'm gonna hand the one microphone that's working all the way down to Dustin, and he's going to introduce himself to the council and the community. So Dustin, welcome to Independence. Here you go.
I can go ahead and stand right here. Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, councilors. So normally I wouldn't need to have a microphone because I can have a booming voice when I want to. Believe it or not, I was in the Army for 10 years and I was also a teacher. So I can go on both ways. Very quiet to get your attention. So just don't make me do those little things, 1, 2, 3, eyes on me kind of thing. I won't do that. We're all adults here. So I can kind of give you a background of my history. It's kind of a little bit of a story to where I got here right now, but I've had over 2 decades of construction experience. And that kind of started off years ago when I was in the Army for about 10 years in the Army Corps of Engineers. And I was an equipment operator and I was a non-commissioned officer. I was also a paratrooper. And so we did a lot of amazing, neat things to include rapid runway repair and route reconnaissance. And I did a lot of neat things in the Army. One of the things that I enjoyed as part of that is that I was an equipment operator and of course a supervisor, and I was able to train a lot of the soldiers underneath me how to run equipment, how to kind of like being the CDL driver. So I was a master operator and driver. So I was training a lot of folks. After the Army, I ended up becoming a teacher for a little bit. And so surprisingly, I learned a lot about psychology and a lot about, how people's minds work. And one of the things that you have to remember is like, you got to meet people where they're at. And so I worked very hard in my career to kind of listen to where people are, having the concerns and everything, and just make it a point to recognize that, and just not kind of go off and make a decision without hearing all the facts. But I did a little bit of teaching, and then I decided I want to go back into construction, and I did that through Public Works. I started off at the very low end of the totem pole, and as a Public Works, kind of a maintenance worker. And so the Public Works Director at the time decided, hey, why you have this experience in the Army? He was a retired colonel in the Corps of Engineers, and he knew what my background was. So like, hey, I got a job for you. And that's with inspection, because you need to move up. So I had done everything from operating equipment and then being Public Works from the ground up. And then I rose up into inspection, where I'm actually a certified public infrastructure inspector through APWA. And so I have a lot of experience with construction management, project management, cost estimation. And that's kind of where some of my strong suits are, especially when you get into CIP projects and preventive maintenance and things like that. But I have a background that spans water to sanitary to stormwater. And it's just kind of a whole gamut of different things. And so that kind of makes me a little bit dangerous knowing a little bit of everything. And so one of the things I want to kind of allude back to is to meeting people where they are. And as an inspector, you have to meet the contractors, you have to meet with engineers, you have to kind of talk with the people that are involved in the projects. And so there's a lot of wealth of knowledge and experience that kind of goes into that to make Public Works really work. And so that kind of leads also into communication. I love to be able to communicate what is this project going to do, how's it going to benefit everybody, and then I have to also be able to create buy-in for that project. And so there is a lot of work ahead of me in the next couple of years on some of the major projects that we have. And part of that is just me being able to communicate what is going on. And I feel that's something that I can bring to the table very well. But as far as me really talking about myself, normally I don't like talking about myself. That is something that I would rather, talk about the crew that does the hard work and is kind of the front facing of the, folks of the community. And so I want to give my crew a really big round of applause if I could. I'm still getting to know them and I'm still drinking from a fire hose. But fortunately, Gerald left some very thorough notes. And so I'm pretty fortunate because succession planning like that is not something that is very common. And I really appreciate Gerald, and I was able to learn a lot from him the last week and a half before he retired. And so this is my first week all on my own. And it's been a really good experience. I've been welcomed to every corner that I've been here, and I'm really excited to be a part of the city of Independence. Thank you.
Welcome. Welcome. I have one question.
Yes.
Do you like Independence?
Do I like it? Yes.
Yes. I do too.
No, that's yes.
Well, what was the subject you taught?
I was a fourth grade teacher for a little.
I'm sorry?
I was a fourth grade teacher.
Okay. And also you mentioned meeting people where they are, and like I mentioned to you at the retirement thing, I like Gerald's list. I don't want the list to go away because we don't talk about these projects at every meeting, so a lot of time goes by and we forget, and so seeing that list is a constant reminder of what's in the works, so if you can maintain that list, that would be great.
That's absolutely true. And the other thing that I need to do as the new public works director is I'm not here to make any changes right now. I'm here to observe and see what's going on, and it's going to be probably a good 6 months before I get into a good groove of things. And so I'm also not the type of person to make changes for the sake of change. There has to be a reason, and I love making data-driven decisions, and I've helped implement new GIS systems in other organizations as well. That's something we really don't have here. But I don't want to just kind of blast forward and say, hey, yes, we need GIS and for all these things. But it's something that we probably look into for kind of the future to help me make those data-driven decisions, because there's a wealth of information that I can get from that. And that's one of the things that I'm really excited about, is being able to implement.
Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Good, right?
Can I ask City Manager West a question? Thank you, Mayor. City Manager West, I see on our calendar of pending agenda items, a update on grants reports in August. I was hoping that you and Assistant City Manager Ryan send us the most recent one. There's been lots of questions online from our community about what grants we apply to, what we've been successful on, what we haven't been successful on. Maybe we can add some information on the FAQ or send it out to counselors can send it out to folks, but that's something that people are really interested
We can absolutely do that. Thank you, Counselor.
All right, we have no unfinished business, so we will move right along to new business. And 7.1, the public hearing for the CLG grant funding and director or assistant superintendent. So we keep on. Minute over to you.
Great, yeah, so I appreciate the opportunity tonight. As you recall, periodically, the city applies for community development block grants. This federal money that's passed through the state. It's a competitive grant program that we're able to apply for. Frequently, we're applying on behalf of another entity. We're sort of the fiscal agent for some kind of community organization that then implements whatever the program project is. So a long time ago, we worked with the Merit program to do micro enterprise development training. We've worked with Polk CDC to do weatherization and building rehabilitation grants and programs. And so we're here tonight because we've been just working with or talking to Habitat for Humanity about possible project that they're interested in applying for. I guess for starters, for this community development block grant program, before we can do anything, the council has to have a public hearing to solicit input on, to essentially say, hey, there's this money out there. Community, please tell us, what we should consider going after for it. You'll see my staff report. I've got a little bit of a description of what we're considering with Habitat for Humanity. I'm sure they're going to provide a little bit of comment about themselves and what they're looking at. But This would be a project to support infrastructure development for a 10-unit affordable housing project that they would be developing here in the community. It aligns nicely with our housing production strategy, and some of the goals there to offer affordable housing, affordable ownership housing, and also to try to leverage grants and other resources to be able to make these things happen, which is, so that's why we wanted to bring this to council and request that you all have this public hearing. There is no action that's necessary with this public hearing. It requires us to have a hearing, take input, certify the minutes, and then that allows us to actually get the application and provide the application. And then once the project is done, there's a second hearing that has to be held in order to essentially describe the results of the grant. And you may recall we had one a few months ago with the Cavasas folks talking about that, child care business development program that they ran. So with that, I'm happy to turn it back over to you for the hearing.
All right, thank you. This evening, we have a public hearing to solicit input for the potential use of community development block grant funds. For anyone wishing to speak, we are asking you to use the speaker cards that are provided. When called upon to speak, you must be recognized by the chair and you must state your name and address for the public record. I will now open a public hearing to solicit input on the potential use of community development block grant funds. I'm opening the hearing at 7:19 p.m. Staff report. Please.
Thank you. Yeah, so as I described this, we're working with Habitat for Humanity, looking at their project on 7th Street for 10-unit affordable housing development. I think the only thing I would add to my previous description would be this is really a minimal fiscal impact to the city. As a fiscal agent, we'll have some responsibility for providing the reporting information to the state. But they're planning on handling the actual writing of the application. They'll be providing the information to us, which we will then pass along. So this should not be a significant time burden on the city.
Do councilors have any questions of staff? All right, thank you. We wish to hear from everyone who's interested in this discussion. Please limit your comments and questions to 3 minutes in length, and remember to state your name and city of residence for the records. I do have one speaker card from Jerry Members.
Good evening, Mayor Kate and members of City Council. My name is Jerry Ambreese. I do live in Kaiser, but I'm representing Habitat for Humanity. You still need my address? 495 Colbert Avenue. Okay, perfect. A lot of it has been shared, Sean. Thank you for sharing what you've shared. Sean's been great to work with through this, navigating this process. But we purchased a little bit of background. We purchased this lot in 2023, and it's located at 940 South 7th Street here in Independence. We're seeking to build 10 homes. We've gone through the planning and the design work process, trying to wrap up some of the redlining with our engineers for the construction permits. We initially had thought we would start the development process early on, but with changes in federal funding, with the change of administration, whatnot, it's delayed our project. These funds, the community development block grant funds, would be the would help us bridge that gap of funding that we need in order to realize these 10 homes. This would be great for the 10 families, local families that are seeking to house. And as Sean mentioned, this also helps with the housing production strategy that you folks have gone through over the last couple of years and outline what the needs are for this community. We do plan on housing families that are between 50 and 80% of the area median income. And also the sooner we're able to get these homes built, to get the infrastructure in, build these homes, they'll be tax producing, which will help out everyone. And so I just wanted to say thank you for this opportunity. I hope all of you guys are in favor of this and helping us then get out there and building 10 homes. And when we're ready for volunteers, hopefully all of you will be out there helping us with hammers and construct for the families that will be living in those future homes. Thank you. And any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Ambreese. Can you talk a little bit about how you solicit applications for families?
Most definitely. So we've used all channels, right? Media, social media, community boards, all of our other community partners and whatnot in the community. We do mailers. We try to blast as much as possible that we're building here and we want folks to apply. And so we do plan on also attending where we see potential gathering spots are their community events, churches. So we try to reach all venues to get the word out that we are applying. More likely than not, most of our qualifying families come from word of mouth. They hear about something, you know, they have that trust, they submit the application, and we start the journey.
And the link has been on the sign at the property.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for noticing
I
that.
lived three doors
Oh,
up,
perfect.
and I
love
walked
it.
by
I
it,
love it.
so I'm excited.
You said independence families move into these, how do you assure that they're independence?
So we say local families, our first priority is to try to keep families in the same communities that they're from. So clearly we'll give preference to the families in Independence and Monmouth area if they're looking to be homeowners. But what we do is if we don't find families, right, which isn't the case typically, but if we do, and if there's a family like from the Salem area within our service area, if they do want to move into the Independence community, they do have to have some type of ties here. Family, work, or whatnot, and then we consider them. What we don't wanna do is, our service area is pretty large, and in the past, we've moved families across our service area, so ours in particular would be from the Dallas Monmouth Independence area all the way through the San Ana Canyon. When we've done that in the past, a lot of our families do succeed moving into a new community, but there's a select few that don't, and then they're wanting to sell their home a year, 2 years in, and it doesn't work, so we do our best to vet the families and give preference to local families from that community. Good questions.
Thank you so much for your update. All right, and now declare the record of hearing closed at 7:12 p.m. Oh, you know, so you, all right, thank you. Item 7.2 is a liquor license application, change of ownership from Mendy's Pizza.
I'll take the mic.
There we go.
We're gonna do that one right. We're.
We're bringing our little karaoke set.
Well, yeah, we have a big karaoke set.
It's definitely not karaoke tonight. Good evening, Mayor and Council. In your packet tonight, you have an action request for a new owner liquor license application for Mendy's, located at 1695 Monmouth Street. This recently been purchased by Trevor and Krista Gilwood. And as indicated, in the memorandum attached, a background review has been completed and no information was revealed that would preclude them from licensure through the OLCC. Now, I didn't personally complete that review, but are there any questions that I might be able to answer for you?
Just, I was a little surprised as I was reviewing the application. Has Mendy's always done off premises sales in addition to on premises?
I noticed that same box today when I was looking through this. I don't know if they've always done that.
Or within recent history, I guess.
Yeah.
Currently, is that?
I'd have to look at that and I can't think of any examples of when they have.
If you they're talking about, it's just that area in front of the building. Because it's not inside the building, but they have that little.
Well, but it's on premises.
Right.
Typically off premises means like area. Okay. So you get a beer today after the
So close.
Thank you for attempting. I know it's a question kind of blindsided us. Okay, and not terribly important, just curious.
I was thinking you'd ask me if the Mustang pizza was still gonna be a thing. From what I understand, most of the menus gonna stay the same, so that's.
Well,
that's what
I was relieved to see that.
There you go. Yeah, all right, thank you.
All right, no further questions, so this is an action.
I move to recommend the approval of the above liquor license.
Second,
We have a motion by Councilor Roden and a second by Councilor Martin Rose. Do a roll call, please.
Councilor Soares.
Aye.
Councilor Roden. Aye. Councilor Marquez.
aye.
Councilor Norton. Aye. Councilor Clark.
All right, thank you so much.
I would just like to say, whoever is fixing up the restaurant, I know that underneath that drop ceiling is the old skylights and stuff, so maybe they'll come back and, we'll be able to see you guys later. Alright. It's been a couple things.
All right, moving on to item 7.3, we have another public hearing for the proposed ordinance 1638. And I believe, Mr. Evander, this is yours.
Yes, so there is a script for you, if you could go ahead and read that.
Yes. This evening, the city council will hold a public hearing on legislative amendment number LA-2026-03 to discuss draft revisions to the Independence Development Code to promote infill development in existing neighborhoods while respecting the character of those neighborhoods. The council will make a final decision on the proposed code based on the complete record, including the testimony received following tonight's public hearings. These proceedings will be recorded. This hearing will be held in accordance with the land use procedures required by the city and state of Oregon. The proposed code change is a type 4 legislative procedure. At the beginning of the public hearing tonight, staff will identify the applicable substantive criteria from the city's comprehensive plan, development code, and/or state of Oregon statewide planning rules. For anyone that wishes to speak, we ask that you use the speaker cards provided. When called upon to speak, you must be recognized by the chair and state your name and address for the public record. Before we begin, does any council wish to declare an actual or a potential conflict of interest in this matter?
I have no conflict of interest, but I just wanted to say I'm the liaison to the Historic Preservation Commission. I attended the meeting that Fred held last night. He did a very, very thorough outline of all the things that are going on with this and explained it beautifully.
Thank you.
Maybe it's the mustache.
Maybe so.
All right, I will now open the public hearing for number LA-2026-03, and the time is 7:30 p.m. May we please have the staff report?
You betcha. Hi there, Mayor, Council, everybody. My name is Fred Evander. I'm the city planner here at the City of Independence, and I'm here to present on the project that we were calling the More Housing Same Great Neighborhood project. We do have our consultant for the project, Matt Hasty, with us tonight, and he will present on the code changes. You will remember we've talked about these code changes for a fair amount of time at this point. We had a couple of council work sessions about the issue, and we also took that walking tour last summer, where we actually saw that what we're proposing as part of this set of code changes is actually pretty common in the City of Independence. We've just sort of moved away from some of the housing styles over time in our zoning code. And so the code changes, in short, really do three things, and Matt will get into this more as he's presenting his changes. They would allow a wider range of housing types and residential areas. They would slightly reduce the minimum lot size in most residential areas as well, from 5,000 square feet to 4,800 square feet. And they would tweak the residential design standards that then apply to the different types of housings that might occur on those lots. Really, it wouldn't change our residential design standards much. It would just recognize that we might get different types of housing on some of these lots, and we want to make sure that the residential design standards address those housing types. Now, to evaluate this change, really, we look at it in terms of the Oregon State Planning Goals and Independence Comprehensive Plan, the Independence Development Code, specifically subchapters 10 and 11. I will talk more about that when I come back, but until then, let's turn it over to Matt Hasty, and he can go through these changes in a little more detail.
Awesome. Thanks, Fred. Can you all hear me okay? Yes, hopefully.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. I am going to share my screen and walk through. Okay, I need to send a request to share my screen, and then I'll do that. And There we go. We'll walk through this. All right. Can't quite see your screen, but are you seeing my presentation up there?
Yes. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, great. Thank you. So yes, I will just sort of cover this in a little more detail. Just kind of review briefly the goals of this project, talk a little bit about the process we went through, talk about the ways we engaged community members in independence, and then review the specific recommendations. I'll repeat a little bit of what Fred said, but hopefully not too much. And then just note the staff, and really at this point, it's a planning commission recommendation for approval. So in terms of the project goals, Fred already kind of touched on this, allowing more types of housing and really kind of increasing flexibility for property owners. Fred will tell you and has told you, I think, that people come in and want to do things that, they can just about do, but your current regulations or rules don't quite allow them to do those things. So this would provide a little more flexibility, address standards related to public improvements, sidewalks, water, sewer facilities. As part of this process, we prepared visuals and graphics just to kind of help illustrate what we've been talking about throughout the process. We want to make sure, and this is actually a state requirement, that any standards that apply to housing are clear and objective. So that there's not discretion required to interpret those. Now, applicants can choose to go through a discretionary process, but there needs to be a clear and objective path for them. And then just ensure that as we're working on these standards and you're implementing them, that's done in an equitable and consistent way, and as simply as possible, understanding this is a development code we're talking about, and they're not super simple, but doing our best to make it as simple as we can. So we started this project last spring, in the spring of 2025, and this is just sort of a summary of the steps we went through. I'll really just say it was kind of an iterative process to look at your development code, look at what we were trying to do and what parts of your development code might need to be changed to do that, then crafting the proposed changes to the code, reviewing them with you all and the Planning Commission and others, revising them accordingly, and now going through this adoption process. So here in the summer of 26. So just to talk a little bit about community engagement, we produced a number of materials, a couple of fact sheets for people to just kind of describe what we were doing. Again, try to do that in kind of as straightforward a way as we could. Fred and Emmanuel produced one of their videos, which if you haven't seen it, you should definitely watch it. It's pretty awesome. I love Fred's videos. So did that. We put together a set of display boards that we used during work sessions with Planning Commission and Council, and also that were kind of on display in City Hall. Fred mentioned the walking tour that he did. There are a couple of those, and then also mentioned the joint Planning Commission Council work sessions. And we had a couple more work sessions with Planning Commission as well, just to kind of talk through these amendments in more detail with them. And now we're here in the public hearings process, which also provides opportunities for folks to comment on all this. So I'm going to walk through the recommendations at a relatively high level. So as Fred said, one of the primary goals here is to allow more types of housing. So I'll say right now, someone could develop on a 10,000 square foot lot, 2 homes or 2 pairs of duplexes, or 2 homes and 2 accessory dwelling units. But those are kind of the limitations, and that's got to be 10,000 square feet because your minimum lot size is 5,000 square feet. And what we're proposing is to kind of expand the configurations of housing that somebody could develop on essentially the same size piece of property. So allow for a broader range of things, triplexes, quadplex. Those could be, the individual homes could be attached or detached, a couple of single family homes and a couple of accessory dwelling units. So just provide some different options for folks. And as Fred said, make some modest reductions to the minimum lot size to allow for that, because you have a lot of lots that are just under 10,000 square feet. So we're proposing to just slightly reduce that lot size. We want to make sure, you've still got standards that limit kind of the footprint of the housing on a given property. So we're retaining for the most part, what are called the lot coverage standards. So you're not covering the entire piece of property with buildings. Some minor increases in that allowable lot coverage, but pretty minor, I would say, like 5% change. And then also, we've prepared standards for what's called cottage cluster housing. And that's essentially a collection of typically smaller homes that are oriented around a common area, common courtyard or yard area. So those are kind of the ways we're trying to expand the options for people in terms of the types of housing that are allowed in your neighborhoods there. We want to make sure we do some things to address parking and access to the properties where these homes are built. You've got a lot of properties that have alleys behind them, which is frankly a great resource in terms of providing access and places to park. So there's less parking on the street or sort of cuts in the curb to get to a driveway. So we're promoting the use of alleys in these new standards, trying to minimize the number of places where you do go sort of across, up the curb into a driveway. So doing that, and then making sure that when you do have multiple driveways on a given the frontage of a property, that you've got enough space between them to allow somebody to park. So we're not kind of having people design things in a way that reduces on-street parking any more than needed. As Fred said, some tweaks to the design standards. You already have really some good design standards, architectural design standards for housing and independence. And so we're not proposing many changes to those. We are tailoring some of the standards related to having windows that face streets and alleys, and also expanding which types of housing some of your design standards are applicable to. Part of that is just being consistent with state law, and part of it is just doing again this in sort of a fair and equitable way. As I said earlier, I think one of the requirements of the state is that standards related to housing be clear and objective. And so there's a number of places in your code where we kind of look through the whole code in terms of the things that apply to housing and identified some things that are not quite clear and objective. They're a little vague. They require some interpretation or discretion. So in those places, we've identified specific changes to them to make them clear and objective. And not a ton, but some of them are related to screening and buffering, landscaping, outdoor lighting, and also the provision of active recreation areas within developments. And there's a few other places where we address that discretionary language. So not a ton of changes, but a number of important ones. And then one of the other things we're doing is allowing for what are called middle housing land divisions. So that's where if you do develop, let's say, 3 units on a piece of property, you can subsequently divide that property so each of those homes has its own piece of ground, and somebody can own the home and the ground that it's sitting on. That's something you're not required to do, but you can do. In some communities in the state, you need to do that. And so, but it's a good way to allow people to both rent or own homes in those cases. It just makes it easier. And then some of the other things that sort of promote the ability or opportunities to own homes are allowing for detached plexes. So usually people think of it like a triplex, those 3 homes in one attached building, but they can be, and we define them here as either that or 3 individual dwellings, homes that are not attached to each other. And I mentioned cottage clusters as well. So those are all kind of some ways we can update your code to promote home ownership or allow for it. And then finally, just kind of ensuring consistency across your different standards. So you do have some provisions related to recreation areas that are no longer applicable based on those provisions applying to certain size properties, which don't exist anymore in those zones. So we removed those. We talked to your public works department about making sure that the standards related to the design of public facilities are consistent with their standards, and again, clear and objective. So there's a number of places throughout the code where you'll see references updated to basically say this needs to be consistent with your public works design standards. And then you've got kind of prior to these amendments, standards related to screening and buffering kind of scattered throughout your code. We're suggesting putting them all in one place and then adding references to those in those other parts of the code, just to kind of make the code a little more cohesive in that way. I will not go over the slide because it basically just says all the things I just said, but it kind of lays it out for kind of all 6 of these objectives that I just talked about. So it's just kind of a repeat of what I just covered. And there are some things that we have not done as part of this project that are follow-up topics. So I will note those. One would be to potentially look at reducing the maximum allowable height of housing in certain zones. And as part of that, also look at some potential standards for transitioning height across a development or between developments or averaging it. That was something we just weren't quite able to tackle as part of this, but it's something that the city, that Fred would like to take a look at as part of a subsequent code amendment process. And then, and I think you're already kind of looking at this, but as part of the park system plan, which I actually also worked on a little bit, there were some recommendations there related to park and recreation lands dedication. So implementing those recommendations using a tiered approach, that's another item that's kind of outside of this process, but it's a related and follow-up item. So we took this to the Planning Commission and they unanimously recommended approval by you all. So that's the recommendation in front of you, and I will stop there and just see if you have any questions for me or for Fred. And I can either keep the presentation up or I can stop sharing it. Just tell me what you want me to do.
At the Historic Preservation Commission last night, I realize this is not historic downtown or anything, but you mentioned that there were some bills that were churning in the Oregon House right now, and one of them included a provision for allowing developers to make 10 changes before their design was final. Will that affect this project?
So yeah, thank you for the question. So what Councilor Morton is talking about is, if you haven't noticed lately in Oregon, there's been a whole lot of bills related to housing in various ways. The legislature has identified what they perceive as an issue associated with land use regulations and the time associated with processing land use regulations. And so they've taken a number of swipes at the time for process, making regulations more flexible, limiting any sort of public review of the projects and whatnot. What this would do is something sort of separate from that. We are going to address all of those issues as part of this another grant funded project that's actually looking at our procedural code. And you folks will see that in the future. That project is just kicking off. And so really, when we're at the Historic Preservation Commission last night, we were talking a lot about that. Now the mandatory adjustments that you're discussing, that is in effect right now. And we did go through a process to try and put into code something to relate to mandatory adjustments. It wasn't as part of this project, but we did it previously. How that works related to this is, yes, people will still have the opportunity to request those adjustments. Luckily, that bill will go away at a certain point, and at that point, we're gonna remove that portion from our code, because that I do not like giving folks 10 options to monkey with our code. So will it affect this? Potentially, if people request it related to a project in one of these areas. This will be longer lasting though than those mandatory adjustments. So
Thank you, that is very encouraging.
And I believe, I think those mandatory adjustments are for certain size projects too. Projects with a minimum number of, I can't remember the number of units, and probably would not affect most of the things we're talking about as part of this process. I think that's my recollection on that. But as Fred said, it is something that sunsets at a certain point as well.
I have two questions, I may. One, when I think of cottage cluster, I think of what the Edwards edition has done, where they have 4 units and have a common courtyard for the 4 units. But then I recently traveled to Corvallis, and also I noticed in Salem and Portland, where they have dozens of 2-story, 10 by 20 residents. You go into Corvallis right off of Highway 99, you'll see that. Is that considered a cottage cluster type of development there? Is that, because I'm picturing this little cute point thing that Edwards Edition has, but is it possible to have a 10 by 20 multiple houses like that? I mean, because their properties are, they're just a few feet between each house. Do you know what I'm talking about? The buildings?
I don't know, and no, I don't know. Matt, I think, knows the cottage cluster standards that we put in here a little bit better. Matt, do you want to talk about?
Sure, I'll talk about that a little bit. I'll first say I don't know if I'm familiar with those developments you're talking about, but I will say that within your standards, there's a limit on the number of cottages within a given cluster or a given cottage cluster development you can have. So there's a limit. I think it's up to either 6 or 8. Now, if somebody had a really big piece of land and they wanted to do multiple cottage clusters, they could come in with multiple, cottage cluster development applications, I suppose, and do something like that. I frankly think you're unlikely to see something of that scope or magnitude here, in part because those tend to be a really niche form of development. And outside of really pretty large cities or metro areas, you just don't see that many of them. So I would be very surprised to see something of that scope or magnitude in a city the size of Independence, just based on the housing market and that. The other thing I would say is that in cities of that size, which are required to allow cottage clusters, they are not allowed to put limitations on the density of those developments. They can put other limitations on them in terms of kind of the amount of open space you have or the size of the units or things like that. You don't face some of those same restrictions. So you can put some limitations on some of those things. And in fact, we have done that to some degree with your standards, since you don't have to adopt exactly the same standards as Portland or Corvallis or a place like that has to adopt. So those are a couple things I would say about kind of what I think you're describing versus what I think you would be a lot more likely to see in Independence. So hopefully that helps.
So follow up to that. So if we were allowed 6 to 8 cottage clusters, I'm picturing what Independence has in like the historic overlay. Our lot sizes are approximately 0.23 acres. And would you be allowed to put that many cottage clusters there?
I don't think you would.
No, I don't think you would either. So so I was gonna, so just for reference, section 75070 is the standards for cottage cluster developments within the draft. I was trying to scroll there, but I'll answer this question first, because I think I can get to that. So no, I don't think that you can, just based on the standards themselves. there's the cottage cluster standards. Have a certain maximum lot coverage associated with them, so it's 45%. You can see that, I'll try and get to it.
And I'll note that's another thing that in those communities you mentioned, they're not allowed to include a maximum lot coverage standard, and you are. And so that's the other reason I don't think you'd be able to see what you described here.
So page 76 of the packet. So you can see with this, that there would be a limitation on the maximum, there's a limitation on the maximum lot coverage. There's also, a certain amount of open space required per cottage. So all of those things are gonna eat away at how many somebody could do on a historic parcel.
Yeah, and several of those things are gonna make them less dense than what you're talking about seeing in those other places.
The second question I have is how will this affect the historic overlay? Will we be allowed to build in the back of historic buildings using the alleys? Is that gonna be allowed?
Yes, that would be allowed, from this. All of the standards that apply to the historic district would still continue to apply, so they would still be evaluated for historic, conformance.
Any further questions? All right, we wish to hear from everyone who's interested in this proposal. Please limit your comments and questions to 3 minutes in length, and remember to state your name and address for the record. We do have commentary tonight from Gail Overs. Oh, come on, oh, sorry, Gail, come on up. Come on up and speak to us. You just have to state your name and just your city.
Gail Overs, Independence. So I just want to say, I fully support this. Your work, I've been following your work on the infill project since you began it, and it inspired me to do my own project, as you know. So I appreciate your work on this. I think it's gonna be great for our community. My situation was one that I found myself alone in a huge house on a piece of property that was just too big for one person. And I thought, what can I do? So I'm gonna do it So thank you very much for this work. I fully support it.
Yeah. Any further questions at this point? Staff have any other things to add or respond to based on the testimony provided?
Not based on the testimony provided, I think that's great. I will just say, I mean, Matt alluded to this, and I'll just try and end here. I should say, we did all the procedural stuff that we need to do associated with this. We sent it to BLCD, we published a notice in the newspaper, all that sort of stuff, just so you're aware of that. The story that I want to tell though is, I really do, Matt alluded to this, I really do hate when somebody calls, they say, I've got an idea for a project. And you look at the site and you're like, I can see that happening. Right? That makes a whole lot of sense. And then you look at the zoning code and you realize, I'm sorry, you can't make that happen. One story I'll tell two stories. One guy called, he said, I wanna put a house over here on this side of my lot. I look at his lot, I'm like, wow, there is totally room for a house right there. I can totally see it. He had a 9,800 square foot lot. He couldn't divide it in half. And so I said, well, you could either do an accessory dwelling unit, or you have to attach a duplex to your existing house. Well, the house would have looked crazy if you attached something to the side of it. And so he's like, I don't want to have a rental, I want to sell the property. You know, I want to sell this house. I'm like, I just can't figure out how to have you do it. Because of that, nothing ever happened on the property, right? That's been a couple of years at this point. Another example, folks with the duplex came in. They wanted to put an ADU above their garage. I look at it, I'm like, dang, I can totally see that. But then I look at the code and I say, well, shoot, we actually don't allow accessory dwelling units with duplexes, right? It's one of those things where the lot's big enough, the garage is there, this is a way to let people live in a structure that's built, right? Essentially. And had to tell them, right now, the zoning code does not allow you to do that project. Right here, these changes would allow that to happen, right? By getting away from some of these use categories that are kind of crazy and saying, hey, if you want 3 units on your property and you have this lot size that's big enough, you can do 3 units. We don't care if they're duplexes and an ADU or whatever it might be, you can do those units. We think ultimately that is a wise decision. Now, I will just tell one more story because I like stories. Patrick was out on the tour with us. Our last planning commission, we did a tour of Edwards Edition with Eric Olson, and he was walking around with us. And one of the things that he said at the end is, we told him what we were doing with this code, and we said, hey, we're just trying to get more flexible to let people have other options of what they can do with their property. And he said, that is very smart, right? I think that is very smart. I think it's a very good decision. I appreciate Matt and planning commissions and your work on all of this, because I mean, this has been something that has, as Matt said, been very iterative. It's been through a couple of versions and it's ultimately come out like this. I think it makes a lot of sense. So that's what I got. Any other questions? I mean. Perfect. Then this is a little different. Oh, you have to close the public hearing.
So if there's no objection, I will now close the record and the hearing at 8:00 on the dot.
And I will say, so it is a little different this time because rather than doing the public hearing and the ordinance as 2 separate agenda items, we made them one agenda item this time. So there is a motion attached on page 22 of your packet, I believe. Is that correct, Myra?
Yeah. All right, stop.
All right, that is an action item.
I move to read the proposed ordinance 1638, an ordinance to adopt a set of revisions to the Independence Development Code to implement recommendations from the Housing Reduction Strategy in full as the text is contained in the council packet for the first time.
Second. We have a motion by Councilor Court and a second by Councilor Morton. Any further discussion?
I appreciate the education that we've got over this over the past year and taking the tour around town and seeing all the different things that we have in town and how this is gonna be a good solution to allow the housing that we already have here. So I appreciate you taking us step by step or we had step by step to learn this and educate us.
All right. Roll call, please, Laura.
Councilor Source.
Aye.
Councilor Rogan. Aye. Councilor Mark Willis.
Aye.
Councilor Morton.
Aye.
Councilor Clark.
Aye.
All right, thank you.
And read the title. And ordinance to adopt set and ordinance to adopt a set of revisions to Independence Development Code to ordinance 1638 and implement recommendations from the Housing Production Strategy. I move to read I move to read the proposed ordinance 1638 for the second time. I have one. I have a process questions with Councilor Ball there. Is that a good practice?
Does not impact you, an automatic no is only if there's a time.
Okay, thank you. I'll make the motion over and send that.
Of course.
Great, we have a motion by Councilor Roden and I believe a second by Councilor Source. Any further questions? All right, thank you. We'll do roll call please.
Counselor Court,
I,
Counselor Martin,
Aye.
Counselor Martin Willis,
I,
Counselor Rose, aye, Counselor Source.
Aye.
Everything down, okay. An ordinance to adopt a set of revisions to the Independence Development Code, ordinance 1638, to implement recommendations from the housing production benefit.
Thank you.
I move to adopt the proposed ordinance 1638.
second,
We have a motion by Counselor Martin Willis and a second by Counselor Court. Further discussion, none, we'll do a roll.
Counselor Source,
Aye.
Counselor Williams, aye, Counselor Martin Willis,
I,
Counselor Martin,
Aye.
Counselor Court.
I,
That's fast.
All right, thank you so much. And moving on to 7.4 with report please on the fourth one, so the rest are for you. Thank you.
Good evening. Council and Mayor. Before you tonight, we have the third quarter financials. These are from fiscal year 25-26 that just ended. This is the quarter ending March 31st, 2026. So the first page, we start with just an update on the public safety fee status. For fiscal year 26, we did come in almost exactly at budget, and as of the third quarter, we had collected close to $611,000 in that public safety fee revenue, so that's very good. That helps support public safety operations during the fiscal year. And utility rate revenues, those also remain strong. We are collecting at above or near 100% all times. I also provided additional information to council just for a comparison. I like to see data compared to previous years, so you can just see how we're trending compared to years past. So we have our 2 previous fiscal years and then the current year to date. You can see how the utility billing is impacted by things like weather, as we improve our system, that reduction in our system loss, the decisions that council makes, we can see how that trends and how that impacts our billing over time. So that's interesting to track and to monitor that. Currently, we're looking good for fiscal year 25-26. Nothing out of the ordinary there, and everything's looking good. And then going down to debt summary, there have been some questions, so I added some additional information here for council. This first page debt summary, these are our outstanding bonds and loans for the City of Independence. In addition to the amount of the debt, the payments for the fiscal year and the ending balance, we have added a graph down below here so you can see how we're tracking as far as getting towards payments off, and then the anticipated or scheduled payoff year of those debts.
So, Director, Perry, is the ICC the Civic Center here? Is that what that parentheses is? On that debt?
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I think it's important because that's a question that the community's been asking a lot about. So right here is the document that the community members can read about the debt for this code.
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So yeah, you can see, and I did note that we have quite a few that are going to be dropping off in the next few years, and I want to continue to track and monitor this closely and find additional ways that we can report so we have meaningful information. We're watching these drop off, and that will help free up revenue sources for the general fund for the city. In addition to our outstanding bonds and loans, there is additional information regarding the Urban Renewal Agency interfund loans on the next page. So this information was summarized previously, however, I have added additional information. I think it provides a little bit more insight. So we have the interfund loans that we have compiled, tracked which fund each is owed to. The year the loan originated, that has been added in, so we can see the timeline for when these loans were made from other funds into our URA. And then also importantly is the beginning year of repayment. Now, former Director Moody did a lot of work when he came on and pulled together all of the information based on resolutions and tracking through our financials and budgets of the interfund loans that were made from our agency's funds to the Urban Renewal Agency. We did find during that tracking that many of them had not begun repayment when he compiled.
So, just because maybe I don't understand this, I should try. Maybe because I don't understand this, are you saying that the loans were originated in 2017, 2018 for that top one?
Yeah.
But the city did not start paying back the loan for 8 years?
That is correct.
URA.
URA. So these
Sorry,
are-
you are,
yes.
thank you.
These are all funds that were loaned to the URA from the city. So that first line, for example, that's the general fund. That is our largest, more than half of the debt that is owed to the city at this time from the URA. And that actually was also for the Civic Center.
So, just so I fully understand,
Mhm.
the URA was we borrowed money against the URA to pay for this building.
The URA borrowed money from the
Thank
city.
you. I get
Yes.
confused, URA
Yes.
borrowed from the city
All of this is
for
all.
this building.
This, in total, the loan balance as of June 30th, 2026 is a little over 5 million in interfund loans. These are all loans that were made to the URA. So the URA owes, the city this balance, yes.
Thank you, Mayor. I think we need to make that distinction in the narrative. So the 3.7 million, that is part of what was paid for this building, correct? Okay.
Yes.
What I would like to see is at the bottom of this chart, the total, the payments that we've made and the loan balance. So that we have a cumulative amount. I mean, I know I can add it up, but let's not, I don't need to do math. So
Absolutely.
it's not helpful. I know I'm shocked, like I'm sure Councilor Soares is too, that we're just now starting to pay some of this back. I mean, some of it you see in 2020, 2021, which is a little bit closer to the date that the loan was put in place. But I think this is really a very important part of what we're hearing from the community and what we as councilors need to communicate. And I want to be a little smarter on it before I do that. We talked at the last meeting about having some URA training, and I think that's really important. I went back and reviewed the URA agreement that established the URA. My understanding is the purpose of the URA was to deal with blight. And I was a little surprised to read down into it that there was new construction and all kinds of other things that were included in it. So I think between what a URA is, what its purpose is, and why we're in this situation right now is really important. And we need to be smart and be able to articulate that to the community.
Absolutely, I think that'd be an excellent work session.
I have you know how much I despise interfund loans. One thing that, and I'm not sure if it all applies to this list or some other lists for interfund loans, I'd like to also see how many times they were refinanced before payment began.
So for the interfund loans, those were not refinanced, they just sat on the books.
Okay,
However, the refinancing happened with the bonds and the outside debt service.
okay, but that is also part of our community debt, and I
It
think
is.
there was some refinancing that went on that obscured when and where repayment would begin, and I'm looking at this for the economic, the general fund. Some of the payments, any one of us would not get away with paying that small of an amount during the whole year.
So during former Director Moody's time, he actually put quite a lot of work into compiling this, which I'm appreciative of. It took a great deal of time. And we have tracked all of these loans down and he actually went back and calculated an interest rate that was owed to the city for the non-payments during that time for the loan balance. So that interest rate is incorporated into the total payments that are being made and the total that is due from each of these funds. So we are receiving interest payments, thankfully. We do have a payment schedule that will be getting more aggressive as the URA pays off some of these. So quite a few of these payments going to the enterprise funds, the water, sewer, storm, will be dropping off in the next couple of years. And as that happens, the amount that the URA is able to pay back to the general fund will increase. We're looking, currently it's paying about $200,000 a year to the general fund. That's going to incrementally increase over the next couple of years. I actually have it with me. Beginning fiscal year 30, the URA will begin paying the general fund back $575,000 for that year. It goes up to $600,000 in fiscal year 31, $800,000 in fiscal year 32, $850,000 in 33, and about $900,000, the final amount will be paid off in 2034. So we are going to aggressively pay these down, but we are constrained by the URA's tax increment.
Sorry. But just because I just wanna make sure we're clear on this, because there's multiple loans to pay off the Civic Center, so I wanna make sure we're not just focused on one. But we were just until a few years ago, I believe, only paying interest on those loans, and we won't pay off the Civic Center until around 2042 to 2045, the entire.
For the bonds, yeah, if you go back to the bond, excuse me. The bonds for the Civic Center. The general obligation bond, excuse me, let me find my line here, 617. Yeah, those are scheduled to be paid off in 2036 and 2040, so the bond payments are farther out.
I think it was a former counselor who discovered that we were only paying interest payments for quite a while, so I think it's great that she discovered that.
Yeah.
That we're working on that. And I agree with Counselor, Ford, that it would be great to get the exact amounts being paid and when it's gonna be paid off, written a little more clear. Because I think it is the topic of the paper.
It is.
And just for clarity, 2 points of clarity, not every single one of the interfund loans were for ICC, some were for other things. The bulk or the largest amounts were for ICC. And then also, if you recall, that almost $4 million, interfund loan that happened in 2018. That one was originally, you may recall, supposed to pay back, I believe it was around 500,000. But the URA wasn't able to. And I think that was last year or the year before, year before. We had to reduce that down after budget because the URA was incapable of paying for them, just for clarity.
You bring up a point, City Manager West. Is there visibility into what all of these transfers did pay for? Is it murky? Yes. Okay, you've answered my question. I wanna just follow up with what Councilor Morton said. I know that right after I became a counselor, the first thing I questioned was the interfund loan transfers. And I know Councilor Morton has been a broken record on that subject as well. And I think where she's going with the question about the refinancing, and I realize that doesn't apply to the URA stuff, but I think what we were led to believe was that yes, there's interfund loan transfers happening. But look at this, we're refinancing all these debts and we're saving so much money, and that deflected us from that issue, and that's why we didn't get to it for several years. You know, and I appreciate the fact that we're there now, and Finance Director Carey, I appreciate your transparency. I don't think, and you back me up on this if you think differently, you and Councilor Martin Willis, this is the most detailed finance information we've got.
I would agree.
Yeah. And so I applaud you for doing this. Please continue to do it and add as much detail as you can. Because we get these questions almost every day from residents in our community. And again, I'm not a subject matter expert on it, but I wanna be able to show them, look at this table, this explains why we're in this situation possibly. I mean, I'm not gonna make assumptions on this until you tell me otherwise, but the uniform loan transfers never sat well with me, but at the same time, when your finance director's telling you everything's hunky dory. Again, I'm not a finance person, I'm reluctant to question somebody who I believe knows what they're doing. But the difference now is you're showing us the information. You're not coming to us and saying everything's great, don't worry about it, just sign this piece of paper. You're actually showing us the information, so keep doing that.
I have the things that I would add, I do really appreciate that we're getting these quarterly reports, and that's something that I'm very glad that we implemented. I think it's incredibly helpful for us to have the debt payment schedule that is something that I think the community really needs to see and understand. I think we're all feeling this right now with the questions around the levy and the fee, and how did we get to this point, and why can't we, why does it feel like we suddenly can't afford things? And so I look at these numbers and I'm like, I wish that our general fund had some of this funding in it now instead of, loaning it out to URA. Because we would be making decisions then, but here we are, we can't go back and undo that. I do think we have an obligation to the community to explain as much of what we do. I know there's a lot of frustration and anger around this. I think people made decisions at the time with the information that they. And I think that's an important thing for people to understand. Maybe not everybody had access to the information that they should have. But again, here we are, I think we're showing that we are wanting to be way more transparent. We put a stop to these transfers, these interloan transfers, because we can see by this debt schedule, which hopefully we can share with the community or is out in the packet, that people can understand the ramifications of doing this. And then again, when we have these further ramifications of let's refinance, because then we're just kicking the can down the road even further instead of rolling this debt off like we are desperately wanting to and on good track to do that. But I can understand why the community has a lot of questions around this, because this level of information has not been shared in the past. So I think incredibly helpful. I have started trying to dig into some of the original URA documents as well to kind of get an understanding. I know why a URA is created, they're incredibly beneficial tools. And I do think we need to remember that our downtown used to look very, very, very different. And this was a great tool to implement to help remedy some of that. And I think being able to further understand it for us, it's not going back necessarily to point fingers and place blame, but to be able to communicate that to the community as to this is why we're at where we're at. And this is how we are putting it on track so that we're not in this situation 5 years, 10 years down the road from here. So I really appreciate this. I know it's more time and effort to dig into this. I know that Director Moody really provided us with a lot of information and got things in the right direction. And hopefully we can do a bit more of a deeper dive into this. And so we can really understand how to make sure we don't slip back into this and what we can do to further push this forward.
Thank you, Mayor, and I really appreciate what you just said. I think part of it is also addressing some misinformation that's prevalent in the community too. So I have a question for our team here. So when I hear things like the URA should be, it's so much revenue that is raining money for the city. The reason why it's not raining money for the city is because previous decisions that were made by maybe some people who are saying that the URA should be raining money from the sky, loaded it with debt, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay,
It's a combination of both underperforming URA and it's burdened with debt. So typically URA, you would, we would have the district that we've identified with the blight. And the goal would be to improve those properties to increase the value on the tax roll, and we would see that payback. Unfortunately, that's not what's happened.
But let's be clear, I was ran for city council based on trying to get our debt under control, and people called me stupid for not understanding the budget at the time. We may be buried in debt, but I don't think we're buried in debt because we did interloan transfers, which I don't particularly enjoy either. But we built this civic center. So if we wanna go back and say we wish we hadn't done it, we wouldn't be sitting in this building right here, we'd still be down by the railroad tracks and the old building. And I remember the downtown, because I've lived here a very long time, and it was nice before too. We used to have a furniture store, a drug store, a soda fountain place, it was nice. So I mean, we can blame a lot of things on this, but I think this building and Minot are a good source of the debt that we're experiencing.
I don't disagree with that. I will say again, Minot is in good financial standing and they are paying back the debt versus the URA is not able to meet those obligations. So I think that's the distinction there. And hopefully again, the URA will get into that position of being able to pay that back. I think there's various different, I've heard lots of different stories about what downtown used to be like. So I think taking that into consideration. And then, yes, we have the civic center, we have the library, we have several facilities that were built in the parks. We can't unbuild them. So that's the situation we're in right now. We can't go back, and I think that's where we get that push-pull and that frustration sometimes of like, let's go back and dig into all the details. And that takes up an incredible amount of staff time to really go back and do that. And frankly, we don't have the staff time. And we can't unbuild. We're not going to take Minot out of the ground. We're not going to unbuild City Hall. So I think we're trying to balance that time and energy into moving forward and coming up with solutions to get us out of this and move this forward. And yes, I'm a big fan of, I want to understand what we're doing to get out of this and then what we need to do to make sure we don't backslid into this again. And so again, stopping interfund transfers has been a big step in that direction of not adding to, because frankly, if we were still doing that, we would just be frankly running the city to the ground. I mean, will we? I'll be different. I can.
I just wanna ask City Manager West, can our next work session or the work session after that be solely focused on the URA? To educate us on the process so that we can answer the kind of questions that we need to answer.
Probably not, but in the near future, it can be.
Okay.
We need to have more time to dig into it. As you recall, we received a grant to try and dig into it. And even the experts had some trouble digging into it. So once we pull more people in, once we have a little bit more staff time, we can dig into it so that we can bring all that information to you. It's just going to take more time.
And in the meantime, I know like I found some reports on the city website with like the URA and how that was put together, right? Maybe we could put a packet together if councilors did want to read more about it. We can at least start getting up to speed on stuff that's already read over.
We could do it, absolutely, we could do a very high level. Sean could do a super high level on what a URA is. In fact, he just told me a few minutes ago he can't, so I'm not throwing him under the bus, he has to say. Yeah, so he can pull it, he was here for some of it, he can talk about it, right, so he can give you that 40,000 foot. But if you're asking me to get all the way into the weeds and.
No.
Okay, okay.
And the only thing I wanna say after this is, a significant portion of the URA problem is still way out years. Still a long time, to keep paying back, and I realize we're paying as much as we can on what we have, but it's still a significant number, even though there's some that are gonna be paid off in a year or two.
One more question, then I might. Ms. Carey, did you exhaust all efforts in this budget cycle to find alternative ways to save the library and museum, or did you stop searching once the fees became and something we were gonna look at for sure?
Well, first off, it's not Director Carey's job, it's the budget committee.
The budget committee asked that question. Did we exhaust?
We did ask that question.
I was directed to prepare the budget with the fees incorporated, yes.
Right, and that's what I'm asking, so we didn't exhaust all efforts to present a budget without the.
Could you explain, Director Carey, what budget looks like without the fee, please?
Yes, I'm actually working on that right now. Without the fee, we would have, with all departments in place, without pulling out community services or parks, if we had no fee revenue. With the budget as prepared, we would have about 200,000 in contingency. So it would deplete our reserves.
But the key word is as budget is prepared.
Yes. And
No, that's, no, that is without the fee.
that's without.
If you take the fee out, we are left with $200,000 in our emergency contingency. That's it. So not as it's prepared. That is without the fee, leaving all the departments in place.
Yes.
And the departments have already laid off people, and they have already combined the museum and the library into one. And they've already budgeted for not having museum and the building. And I think I've laid off, Patrick, 4 people in the library, 11 full-time positions, or 11 positions total throughout general fund. So it's not, I mean, the clarity needs to be there, that all of these, you asked about 1 year, counselor, this has been 4 years. 4 years of a pathway, 4 years of saying, we're gonna run out of money, you need to listen to us. 4 years of laying people off and having people yell at me. 4 years of saying, we are running out of money. Last year, I sat in the budget committee meeting and I said, if you do this, we will have no money next year. Here we are. Without that fee, we will have no money. For 4 years, we have been doing this. We have been talking about this. We've been warning people for 4 years. I took jobs away from people. So it is not as budgeted, counselor. It is not 1 year, it is 4 years.
And I don't think you're misconstruing what I'm saying, and I'm just saying I still don't think we exhausted all efforts.
Well, Councilor Knight, we are going to agree with this on this, because I know that this is a question that has been floating around in the community chat pages on lovely social media. I feel it does a big disservice as a council to promote that message that we did not do our due diligence to look at all options. We had a budget committee, we met multiple times. As City Manager West has said, Director Moody sounded these alarm bells loudly. Hey, we're looking down the line, I know you don't like this. You are going to have structural deficits. You can't keep pulling from your reserves. You are going to have to find other alternatives and other means of doing this. And these are very, very tough decisions. This is dividing the community. I know it's dividing the community. We've all seen it, we all feel it, we talk with our neighbors, we talk with our friends. Very difficult. But to say that we took the easy way or the lazy way, or we didn't care, or we didn't look at all options is false. It is absolutely false. Because at any point in those meetings, any one of our budget committee members could have stood up and said, I want to talk about an alternative. I have a list of things that are considered.
Then I didn't have a second.
Okay, but you're following the process, so just because you brought something up and nobody seconded it, should have informed you of that.
I just wanna echo what the mayor's saying, and say we have an extra meeting open to further discuss and more public feedback. Then we were ready to make the decision, we said, let's hold it open one more meeting to get more feedback. And we spent well over 20 hours talking about a budget in a small town where we exhausted this process. We talked about contingencies, we talked about other ways to do it. I remember City Manager West warning us a year ago, and the thought at the time was we would have a year to talk with our community about the needs and educate the needs, and we did that. And it's really frustrating to say that and spout this information about us not. Because the answer is, we heard them and there was an agreement on their proposal. There's a difference. And it's.
Can I make one last comment, Mayor? This will be it. Unfortunately, there are anonymous posters in the chat room who are just stirring up trouble, causing issues for us, but. Part of your counsel to the task force that the mayor convened was to look at revenue sources to figure out where the funds come from. So you did indeed do that. You know, and so I think, as the mayor said, we have exhausted all resources. I believe the city has worked in good faith with the representative task force. I'm sure the fee was not the first suggestion that they had. I'm sure, you know, having talked to some of the members myself, they came to both you and City Manager West and said, what can we do? What are the possibilities? That is how you go through the process. That is into the cracks to try and find money. It isn't there. So unfortunately, we're going to deal with conversations that are fully uninformed. And I think the mayor's doing a really good job of trying to get the facts out there, but again, we need people, and I don't know who these people are, but we need people to stop promulgating the misinformation about the fact that we aren't doing our jobs, we aren't doing them well, we aren't trying as hard as we can to find a solution that will work for everybody. I'm tired of having to explain that, you know, I want people to read the budget. Go to page 59 and 60, the museum and the library, there are dashes all the way across the page. That's all you need to know. There's no money, so you did your job, you did look for alternative resources, and where we got is a fee.
And if it's that easy, I want to hear the solutions instead of just the criticism and I take personal offense to comments like our council is corrupt.
Yeah.
And people that forget that we are friends and we're their neighbors and we're the people that they've spent the evening with. And yet, what I don't see are realistic solutions being presented. And I don't hear those people at these either. So to those of you that are here and that do speak, support us, thank you so very much for offering input. It is appreciated.
Even if you don't support us.
Yeah, even if you don't, thanks for showing up.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, for just one last thing. I just wanna say. I have never posted. Anonymously on any city topic.
Okay, no one is.
No, I'm not saying that you're community, I'm just declaring that, I feel like it would still be a violation of form if I commented on something I know city council was already commenting on and I disguised my name, I've never done that. I haven't done that, I haven't even debated this online in weeks. I would never do it. Without anybody knowing the.
I unfortunately, there is a lot of anonymous.
Right, yes, but it's not.
I'm sure you're older.
One thing that I've also, when I'm having conversations with people in the community and they say, we voted the levy bill. And now you turn around and you just put this fee in place and you're bypassing the voters. I do want to provide context to that or some understanding of The taxpayers also at one point supported building the library. We have a massive amount of money invested into our facilities, whether it's our library, our museum, our parks. And we have a financial responsibility to make sure we are at least trying to come up with solutions to protect those assets. Yes, we can sell them, we have some of them up for sale, but until those sell, we still have to take care of these facilities. We have to pay insurance on them, we have to understand what does that look like to close the park. We haven't ever had to do that. What does it look like to close the library? Well, we found out there's a process to that, and that process is going to cost the city money while if the signatures are printed, right? So there's lots of different scenarios going on right now. But if those signatures are collected, we are not unable to get that revenue source coming in. We still have to now find the money to support that, which is going to put a huge financial burden on the city. So we are doing the best that we can to protect the facilities that we do have in place. We are well aware that the fees are not popular, and we know the fees aren't popular. We really wish we would not have to put fees in place. That is not popular for us either. But we are out of ideas, we are out of solutions other than, again, backsliding in to taking money from our utilities to make our general fund whole, which, as we just talked about, gives us huge problems to deal with in the future. So I am hoping that our community can agree to disagree, to be kind to your neighbors, to be kind to people that maybe don't have your same viewpoint, and understand that we are all ultimately hoping to create a sustainable future for us. And that is what we are working very hard at. We have further questions for carrying on this actually wonderful report. We are very appreciative of having this information. It's incredibly helpful. And I think if we didn't have this information, we would be having very different conversations.
And as time allows, I will continue to expand on it as well.
I just wanna say, I apologize for the problem with that mic, I don't know what it is, but I turned a bunch of them off and it seems to be stopped, so. That's the CrossFit figures and how they correct me, so I don't know what that. Yes.
And I've been texting with our IT director and, yes, and so we may be having to have someone come in and take a look at it. So grace and patience on it for a little bit, our apologies.
Further questions on this stuff?
I do, thanks, Mayor. As we, once the new fee conversation is solved in the community. And it either, I guess my question is, assuming it's continued. What's the process of bringing that reporting update into this? Would we get our first update in Q4?
No, you would get your first update with the first quarter reporting for fiscal year 26-27.
Thank you.
All right. Board appointments.
Thank you, Mayor. Item number 7 is the next item before you. It's the third quarter board committee and commission appointments. As you know, we bring these appointments forward on a quarterly basis. Under the appointment process, we adopted to provide a consistent, transparent, and efficient approach to filling vacancies. This evening, they'll be considered appointments to the library board and one vacancy on the ad hoc community services and park sustainability committee. Mayor, I'll turn it over to you to lead the council through the appointment process as you choose.
All right, thank you very much. So for the public library board, as Manager West mentioned, we have 2 open positions, and we do have applicants for the open positions. We have David Christensen is currently serving in position number 6 and has applied for the appointment. And then we have 2 new applicants, Lorraine Sorensen and Loretta Chioni. So I'm pronouncing that correctly, but I did want to hear from people on their thoughts on the applicants.
I think that, so, or, yeah, this. I should for the source of this, I think Nathan has brought some, important leadership to the library board. That's been something, not all of our boards and commissions have worked, in that kind of fashion. They've been kind of hit or miss. So my thought is to extend him to continue that work. And then consider possibly somebody new after that term. As far as the other folks are concerned, I know both of these women personally. Lorraine, who's in the audience, is a very new resident here in town. I think it'd be a great way for her to get involved in stuff. She's tipping her toe in. And hopefully we can get her to volunteer for a whole lot more stuff in the future. Same thing with Loretta, we only have 2 slots open. I never wanna turn a resident down who wants to serve their city. So is there some other position maybe on another commission or board or committee that we could maybe offer to somebody else?
Parks board. Parks.
Well,
I might have one rolling off in the future, whether it's.
I have a suggestion, and I mean, I'll defer to whatever it is you recommend, but Loretta indicated in her application that she would like to also volunteer at the library. 4 to 5 hours a week I think is what she said. We have a board position available on the Friends of the Library. And I'm wondering if she would be amenable to filling that position versus the city's library board.
Further thoughts, questions, comments?
It's your prerogative, man.
I know that I'm asking for input on these positions.
They're all.
You're a hard decision.
No, I mean, I do like, Councilor Core, I do like your suggestions, I do appreciate, the additional backgrounds, with finding a position for Loretta, correct, perhaps the Friends, and then if she could visualize her hours for volunteering in the library, that would be much appreciated, so.
I'll be happy to get out.
Great. So I think the recommendation is to continue Nathan Christensen's appointment. And then thank you, Doreen, for offering up your or volunteering for us. We really appreciate that. We'd love to welcome you to the board. And there is on the ad hoc Community Services and Park Sustainability Committee, as most of you know, Aaron Seiler is moved away, leaving a vacancy. This is not a long-term appointment, but we do need somebody to fill that, and my recommendation is to appoint Dr. Human. Thank you for bringing stuff into that role, because I think you have an understanding of what has already gone into that ad hoc community services and park sustainability committee, and we'll be able to get around them. So. Thank you. So with that, I believe we have our positions filled. And with that, we are going to go into executive session script. You want to read the script? Oh, thank you. And I don't remember from the top of my head either. Executive session in third floor conference room pursuant to ORS 192-6602E to conduct deliberations with persons designated by the governing body to negotiate real property transactions.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We will move to the third floor conference room and we'll come back when council is done with the executive session.
You're probably.
Audio.
Reconvene from executive council, item 7.7.
And I move that the council direct the city manager to complete negotiations for the sale of the museum building. Second.
We have a motion by Councilor Source and a second by Councilor Roden. Any further discussion? None? The roll call, please.
Counselor Core,
Aye.
Counselor Morton,
Aye.
Counselor Martin Willis,
Aye.
Counselor Roden,
Aye.
Counselor Source.
Aye.
Thank you, motion passes. With that, we are, in council announcements.
So if you don't know, my daughter was hurt during the 4th of July parade. And since then, I've become more educated on e-bikes and scooters and learned that there's not really a lot of laws and rules and regulations to those things. My daughter was injured so significantly that on the 4th of July, I was in the hospital with her. Her eye is significantly damaged and there's been no repercussions to the people who hit my daughter during the parade. She was just retrieving candy and was struck at over 20 miles an hour and still can't see out of her eye as well as she should at 14 years of age. I worked with Chief Banelos and I am focused and desired to help him and help this state get some rules and guidelines for e-bikes and scooters. My daughter is hit, like I said, at over 20 miles an hour. And if a child that wasn't as strong and beastly, and I say that in the most positive, loving way as I can about my daughter, they could have killed a child at that rate of speed. And from my understanding at this point, this is all speculative because I don't know who these people are that hit my daughter. That they were not participants in the parade, from my understanding, shouldn't have been there, and caused a lot of damage to my family. So, anything I can do to help police in the state of Oregon get some rules and regulations for e-bikes and scooters, I'm all.
I know that's popped up on some of the city community or city pages where other communities have been asking about what they're doing for rules and regulations. So hopefully, collectively, people can come together and address that issue since been talking about them.
Well, I know that we have several youth under the age of 16 that are riding scooters and e-bikes and lacking helmets. What rules they are not being closely monitored. So I would encourage parents to familiarize themselves with the rules and have their children adhere to them. Terribly sorry to hear about your daughter, Counselor Bird.
Councilor, my sympathies, I would urge you to put those kinds of issues on the agenda so that we can get staff reports so that we know what's going on in our community, what the laws are now, so that we can help change that. Cause I think this kind of discussion gets lost in the meeting if it's not on the agenda. I just wanna make a plug one more time for Chair Yoga. We only had 3 people there today, it's free. I was there, Patrick. Oh yeah, yeah. Okay, I was the 4th, yeah, you're right. But it's free and it's great exercise and I realize that everybody's available during the daytime, but it's every 2nd and 4th Tuesdays at 11 o'clock in the library meeting room. It helps me get ready for this meeting, so I encourage everybody to take advantage.
Thank you, Mayor. I think it's a surprise to anyone here that I've been actively communicating with our community in some of these social media chats. And I've been very surprised by how many people in our community have not gone to our library and our museum. I think it's really important for people to come out and go to the public buildings and public services that you pay for, and I would highly encourage folks to go to Chair Yoga if that's your thing. I think that it might be your thing.
And if it's not, it might be coming.
And it might be coming, who knows, that's true. The museum has some incredible exhibits right now, highly encourage it, and You know, I think it's just part of our civic duty to kind of just see what's going on in your community and learn about your community. So I would just challenge and encourage folks who maybe have lots of feelings about the fee, you know, I have lots of feelings too, but like, let's go and use our public services that we have, so. I just wanna challenge my friends and neighbors, if you haven't been to that museum, or if you haven't been to our library in a long time, I would go check it. Thank you.
Alright.
Thank you, Council.